It started out like any normal Tuesday afternoon, quiet, slow, the kind of day that just drags on. I had taken the day off work, hoping to catch up on some cleaning and maybe finally fix that leaky faucet in the kitchen. The house was peaceful, almost too peaceful. My husband was away on a business trip, and I had the whole place to myself. But little did I know, a simple delivery would turn that quiet afternoon into something I would never forget. I had ordered a small side table online a few days ago, something I'd been eyeing for weeks. Around 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw a guy standing there with the package. He looked like your average delivery guy, tall, broad-shouldered, polite, and easygoing. He smiled and offered to bring the package inside since it looked heavy, and honestly, I didn't think twice about it. I said sure. It felt harmless. Friendly even. As he stepped in and placed the box near the living room, he casually asked for a glass of water. Again, I didn't think much of it. It was hot outside, and he looked like he'd been working all day. I brought him the water, and we exchanged a few words, just small talk. But then, something shifted. His tone started changing. He lingered longer than he needed to. I laughed nervously, brushing it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting. I even remember checking the clock, counting down the minutes until he would finally leave. But he didn't. At first, it was subtle. The compliments. The way he looked around the house. How close he stood. I tried to keep my distance and stay polite, hoping it would signal that I wasn't interested. I told him I was married. That my husband would be home soon. I even reached for my phone, pretending I had a call. Still, he didn't get the hint. Or maybe he didn't care. That's when I realized something wasn't right. I asked him to leave, twice. I even opened the door and stood there, trying to make it clear. But he stood his ground, still smiling, still trying to act like this was normal. My voice began to shake, and I said it louder, more firmly. Please. Just go. But instead of listening, he stepped closer. And in that moment, my heart dropped. I wasn't just nervous anymore. I was scared. I begged him to stop, to respect my space, to leave. But he didn't listen. I wish I could say it ended right there, but it didn't. What followed next shook me to my core, not just because of what happened, but because of what I did next. Something I never thought I'd do. Something that changed the way I saw myself, my marriage, and trust altogether. And that is where everything truly began. I froze for a second, not sure what to do. Everything felt unreal, like I was watching it happen from outside my own body. I kept thinking, how did this even get to this point? He was just a delivery guy. A stranger. He had no reason to act like this. And yet, there he was, still standing in my living room like he belonged there. My mind was racing, but my body felt stuck. I remember thinking back to that morning, how normal it all was. I had woken up late, made coffee, sent a few emails, and even texted my husband a sweet good morning photo. We had our issues, who doesn't, but nothing ever made me question us. He trusted me. And I had always been loyal. I wasn't someone who got caught up in drama. I wasn't reckless. But somehow, here I was, in a situation that felt impossible to explain. The man's eyes scanned the room like he was looking for something. I tried to stay calm, to not show fear. I kept talking, trying to distract him, hoping maybe if I stayed composed, he would come to his senses and leave. Look, I appreciate you helping with the box, I said, forcing a weak smile, but I really need to be alone now. I have calls coming up. My husband is going to FaceTime me soon. I was lying, of course. There were no calls. No FaceTime. But I needed him to believe that someone was watching. He didn't respond. He just looked at me, longer than he should have, and then, slowly, walked over to the package like he was going to lift it again. I stepped back. My heart was beating so fast I could feel it in my ears. I should have never let him in. That thought haunted me even before anything happened. My gut had told me to just take the box at the door, but I ignored it. I didn't want to seem rude. I didn't want to be that woman who overreacted. But now I was starting to realize, being polite had put me in danger. Then, something even more unsettling happened. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. A selfie. It was me from earlier, when I opened the door. I hadn't even noticed him take it. That's when I knew, this wasn't just a delivery gone wrong. This man had planned something. And I had walked right into it. I stared at the photo on his phone, my mouth dry, my pulse thudding in my chest. There was no mistaking it, it was me, caught in that split second when I had opened the door, completely unaware. I didn't even know what to say. My first instinct was fear, but quickly, it turned into something else, confusion, anger, disbelief. Who does something like that? And more importantly, why me? I took a step back, my eyes not leaving his. Why did you take that? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he shrugged like it was no big deal. Like this was normal. You looked nice, he finally said, almost casually. That one sentence sent chills down my spine. There was something off about him, not just in what he was saying, but in how calm he was. Too calm. Like he had rehearsed this moment in his head long before it happened. I glanced toward the front door, calculating the steps, wondering if I could just bolt. But he noticed. Relax, he said. I'm not going to do anything. The words were supposed to be reassuring, but they weren't. In fact, it was the way he said them, with this strange calmness, that made it even more unsettling. At that moment, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my neighbor, Clara. We usually exchanged harmless gossip or reminders about trash pickup. But this time, it was something else. Is everything okay? Saw someone go in a while ago. Just checking. That message, it felt like a lifeline. But I didn't want to make things worse. I didn't want to scare him or provoke a reaction I couldn't control. So I replied with something simple, yeah, all good. Thanks for checking, Redheart. It was a lie. But it bought me a little time. Then, out of nowhere, he began talking about how lonely he'd been. How people never saw him. How some days, it felt like he didn't even exist. I didn't know if it was real or part of some act, but he was saying these things like we had some kind of connection. Like we were two broken people who had found each other in this strange moment. Meanwhile, my thoughts were racing. I started thinking about my marriage, about how distant things had been lately. The silence between texts. The coldness in conversations. Was that why I hadn't pushed harder to make him leave right away? Was I looking for something too? But just as I started to make sense of my feelings, he reached into his jacket, and that's when I knew things were about to change. My eyes locked on his hand as it disappeared into his jacket. My breath hitched, panic tightening in my chest. In that split second, 100 thoughts ran through my mind. Was it a weapon? Was he going to hurt me? Had I just made the biggest mistake of my life letting him inside? I stepped back, slow and cautious, not wanting to startle him. He pulled something out, and for a second, I couldn't tell what it was. My heart was pounding so loudly I almost couldn't hear anything else. It was just a small notebook. Nothing threatening. But somehow, it didn't make me feel any safer. He held it up, almost proudly, and flipped through the pages. Inside were names. Places. Notes. I saw random addresses, times scribbled next to them, even small doodles and what looked like descriptions of people. I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then, he tapped one of the pages. That's you, he said quietly. I stepped closer, against my better judgment, just enough to see the writing. My name was there. My address. The time my package was delivered. And beneath it, a note, husband out. Alone. Warm smile. I felt sick. I looked at him again, but this time I wasn't just scared, I was furious. What is this? I asked, my voice shaking. Why do you have this? He didn't answer. Instead, he started pacing, talking more to himself than to me. He mentioned other houses, how people never really notice the guy delivering their things. They never lock the door behind them, he said with a grin. They trust too easily. The room felt smaller and smaller. I knew I had to do something, anything, before this spiraled out of control. My phone was still in my pocket, but I couldn't risk reaching for it now. I glanced at the window. It was slightly open, maybe enough to shout, to signal someone. Then he stopped pacing and turned to me, his expression suddenly serious. I need to ask you something, he said. Something real. I didn't respond, afraid of what might come next. If your husband doesn't even notice you're hurting, why should I? My stomach dropped. That question wasn't just meant to make me think, it was meant to trap me. And before I could answer, he took a slow step forward. I stood frozen as he stepped closer, his words still ringing in my ears. Why should I? It felt like more than a question, it felt like a warning. I backed up slowly until I felt the edge of the coffee table against my legs. My brain was screaming for a way out, but then, just as the tension reached its peak, my phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't check it. I was too focused on him, on what he might do next. But he noticed the vibration. His eyes darted to my pocket, and for a brief second, I saw something shift in his face, uncertainty, maybe even panic. Whatever power he thought he had over me was slipping. Who keeps texting you? He asked, his voice sharper now. Your husband? I didn't answer. That silence only made him more agitated. He took another step, but suddenly, the doorbell rang. We both froze. He turned his head slowly toward the front door, confused. I could tell it wasn't part of his plan. My heart leapt with the smallest flicker of hope. Then a voice called out, familiar, warm, and completely unexpected. Hey. You home? I brought those curtains you wanted to borrow. It was my sister, Jenna. She wasn't supposed to come over that day. She never came without warning. But here she was, standing on the other side of the door like some kind of divine intervention. I made a quick decision, praying it wouldn't backfire. I'm in the back. I shouted, loud enough for her to hear. Doors open. The delivery guy's eyes widened. What are you doing? He hissed, stepping back like he'd been burned. Why'd you do that? I didn't answer. I just stood there, watching him panic, watching him try to decide whether to bolt or stay. Jenna's footsteps echoed through the hallway a second later. As she appeared in the doorway, smiling and holding a bag, her face dropped the moment she saw him. Who's this? She asked cautiously. He turned, trying to regain his composure. I was just leaving, he mumbled, already moving toward the door. Jenna stepped aside, letting him pass, but her eyes stayed locked on me. She knew something was off. The second the door clicked shut behind him, I collapsed onto the couch. My hands were shaking. Jenna rushed over, grabbing my face. What happened? Who was that? I couldn't answer right away. All I could think about was the notebook. My name. My address. That photo. But just when I thought it was over, just when I thought I was finally safe, my phone buzzed again. I glanced down, half afraid to look. It was a message from an unknown number. You shouldn't have done that. This isn't over. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was something deeper. Something darker. Whatever this man wanted, it wasn't about a package. It wasn't even about me, not really. It was bigger than I thought. And somehow, I was right in the middle of it. I stared at the message on my phone, my hands trembling. The words echoed in my mind, "You shouldn't have done that. This isn't over." I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me, but also a strange clarity. I knew I couldn't just sit and wait for whatever threat this man represented to come back knocking. I called Jenna over and explained everything: the delivery guy, the photo, the notebook with my details, and the strange message. She immediately insisted we call the police. But I hesitated, afraid what might happen if I involved them too soon. Instead, I decided to do one more thing. I checked the messages on my phone to see if there was anything else from that unknown number, anything that could give me a clue. That's when I found it, a short video he had sent moments before he left. It showed the inside of my house. The camera panned slowly, lingering on personal things like family photos, the spot where my husband usually sat. It was like a warning, a chilling reminder that someone had been watching for a long time. I swallowed hard and made a decision. I would tell my husband everything. When he called later that night, I told him every detail. At first, he was stunned, speechless even. But then came the shock. He confessed something I hadn't expected. He admitted that the delivery guy wasn't just a random stranger. In fact, he knew him. The man used to work for a company that my husband's business was involved with years ago. They had a falling out, and the delivery guy had a grudge, one that apparently extended far beyond work. Suddenly, the pieces started to fit. This wasn't random. It was personal. Someone was trying to send a message, and I was caught in the middle. Together, my husband and I contacted the police, who set up surveillance around the house. They warned us to stay alert, to be careful who we let in. For the next few days, every noise, every knock at the door sent my heart racing. The tension was unbearable. Then, on the fourth day, the unexpected happened. The delivery guy showed up again, not at the door, but inside the house. How? We later found out he had a key. A spare key that my husband had given a few years ago to someone he thought he could trust. I froze when I saw him, but this time, I was prepared. The police were already on their way. He didn't resist when they arrived, but before they handcuffed him, he smiled coldly. "You thought this was about me," he said quietly. But it was always about him. That was when he revealed the truth: the grudge wasn't just professional. It was personal. My husband had made a choice years ago, a secret deal that had hurt the delivery guy deeply. The infidelity, the lies, the betrayals, it was a tangled web we never saw coming. As the police took him away, I realized that the real betrayal wasn't just about a delivery gone wrong. It was about trust broken long before, and about secrets hidden behind closed doors. And just when I thought I could finally breathe, my phone buzzed once more. A new message from the same unknown number: "You're not safe." Not yet. The nightmare wasn't over. It was only just beginning. After the delivery guy was taken away, the house finally felt quieter, almost like I could breathe again. But the message on my phone haunted me: "You're not safe." Not yet. It was a chilling reminder that what had started as a simple delivery had uncovered something much darker beneath the surface. In the days that followed, my husband and I sat down and talked openly about the secrets, the mistakes, and the cracks that had formed in our relationship over time. It wasn't easy. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But we both knew that hiding things only made the shadows grow stronger. The police kept a watch on our neighborhood for a while, and I changed my routines, being more cautious about who I let into my home and always double-checking deliveries. I even installed new security cameras. It wasn't about paranoia, it was about protecting myself and my family. Looking back, I realize how important it is to listen to your instincts. I ignored my gut that day, thinking it was just a harmless favor. But sometimes, danger can hide behind a friendly face, and being polite isn't always the safest choice. This experience taught me about boundaries and the value of being assertive, even when it feels uncomfortable. It also made me reflect on how important honesty and communication are in any relationship. The real threat wasn't just the stranger at the door, but the secrets we kept from each other. Even now, when I tell this story, I think about the delivery guy's words, that it was all about him and the history I didn't know. It reminded me that sometimes, the past can reach into your present in ways you never expect. If there's one thing I want anyone watching to take away, it's this: trust your feelings. Don't ignore red flags, no matter how small they seem. And if you feel alone, speak up. Don't carry the weight of silence. Life doesn't always hand you neat endings. Sometimes, the threats linger, the wounds take time to heal, and the scars remind you to stay vigilant. But you grow stronger, wiser, and more in tune with yourself. Thank you for listening to my story, my true infidelity story. If you've ever faced something similar or have thoughts to share, please comment below. Remember, none of us are alone in the challenges we face. Stay safe, stay aware, and always protect your peace. 7.